One of the operating methods and strategies adopted on a significant scale by the pharmaceutical arm of Nigeria's healthcare sector, and which had contributed to growth in the sector in times past, is the concept of contract manufacturing. The concept entailed an arrangement whereby some pharmaceutical companies engaged and relied on manufacturing plants elsewhere to turn out popular brand name products on their behalf on contract basis. The implication is that such pharmaceutical companies never felt compelled to own dedicated factories of their own where they could manufacture their products by themselves. However, the concept had its downside. Good evening and welcome to today's edition of You and the Economy. My name is Chinemerem Joseph. Popular as it was in making the pharmaceutical sector thrive, contract manufacturing was also a drain on Nigeria's foreign reserves. And here's the reason why. Most of the contract manufacturers engaged for this model of production by many players in Nigeria's pharmaceutical industry were based overseas, especially in India. Consequently, payments for products manufactured by overseas-based contract manufacturers were made in foreign exchange with a deleterious impact on the foreign reserves of the country. To reverse this trend and ease the pressure that contract manufacturing had continued to exert on Nigeria's foreign reserves and her economy too, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has been encouraging pharmaceutical companies that had been making use of overseas-based counterparts to make their products to engage domestic pharmaceutical companies with excess capacities at their plants to take up this role. This is being done by the CBN through the advancement of concessionary credit facilities to pharmaceutical companies which had been operating the contract manufacturing model tied to overseas suppliers for them to redirect the patronage to Nigerian pharmaceutical companies. Today's edition of You and the Economy takes a look at how domestic contract manufacturing is enjoying a boom in the pharmaceutical industry and the attendant benefits for the Nigerian economy. Here now is the story.
Contract manufacture is actually companies that do not have factory going to produce the products they sell from companies that have factory.
Simply put, it's the outsourcing of all or a part of your manufacturing operation to a third party, usually called the CMO, the Contract Manufacturing Organization. Okay, so it involves two parties, the contract giver and the provider.
These production activities you are watching were recorded at the factory of May & Baker Nigeria PLC, one of the leading pharmaceutical companies in the country. However, the production process is not designed to churn out products and brands for the pharma giant's warehouse inventory, nor for its distributors to market. Rather, the final output from these activities are to meet orders made by other pharmaceutical companies operating in the country, but which are totally independent of M&B. The arrangement was consummated under a popular production model in the pharmaceutical industry known as contract manufacturing. And here is how the contract manufacturing model operates in the pharmaceutical industry.
As in every other contract, you go to somebody who produces what you need, whether to consume or to sell, that you do not have the ability to produce. So essentially, in the sense of contract manufacturing in the pharmaceutical industry. You have companies that import products from outside of the country. Technically, the company that they're importing those products from, whether in India or China, is like their contract manufacturer. So they own the brand name. Many of them have registered these products in their name, but they do not have a factory to produce it. So they get a company outside of the country that has a factory that can produce this medicine for them. Most of those medicines are medicines that are known, that are being used to treat ailments. People know it. So they didn't research it, they didn't develop it. It's common medicines. But they want to sell it in their own company name, and they have a brand, and they have registered that brand with NAFDAC. So they need a company that can manufacture it.
Prior to recent initiatives, contract manufacturing in Nigeria's pharmaceutical industry was offshore-driven, as the final products of the model were mostly made by overseas-based manufacturing companies rather than those based in Nigeria. The resort to offshore plants arose because most of the players in the sector, who do not have factories of their own, prefer to engage the services of foreign pharmaceutical companies to produce their orders. With Nigeria's immense endowments in flora, from which the bulk of raw materials processed into substances used as ingredients for the production of pharmaceutical drugs is sourced, it is rather strange that companies that opted for the contract manufacturing model in the country's pharmaceutical industry had adopted one that was tied to raising their orders from overseas countries, instead of having them produced in Nigeria. Preference for the model is even more intriguing and worrisome because it played a key role in eroding the exchange rate of the naira, notably against the United States dollar, the most used foreign currency for payments for orders made under the model. Here is the explanation of how the disadvantageous model of contract manufacturing came to being in Nigeria.
Some 3 decades away, you had many big pharmaceutical companies in Nigeria, and many of them had factories, like May & Baker, like Pfizer, Glaxo. So when these big multinational companies had factories in Nigeria, they were able to meet most of the needs of Nigerians in common medicine, things like paracetamol, Panadol, and the rest of them. But with the downturn of the economy globally and locally, some of these companies started going back. So you see companies like Pfizer divested to Nimet. Fortunately, May & Baker has been here, despite the fact that the foreign entity ceased. The local entity continued to exist. But with most of these multinational companies pulling back their resources, you find out that it was impossible to meet the local needs from local production. So what started happening was we started looking to other countries to bring in products. So frankly, I would say that this is a problem that is that is significantly about 3 decades old.
As you have just been told, contract manufacturing is not a new phenomenon in Nigeria's pharmaceutical industry. And in reality, the model was domesticated at inception. In other words, the manufacturers contracted to service the model when it was first introduced in Nigeria were pharmaceutical companies based in the country. Similarly, the products they were engaged to deliver were produced at their plants that were also based right here in Nigeria. Thankfully, as you were informed earlier, the modus operandi of that era of yore when it first gained prominence in the country's pharmaceutical industry is now the new face of contract manufacturing in Nigeria. As a result of the impressive successes being recorded by a host of pharma companies in accessing the Healthcare Sector Intervention Fund of the CBN, and with the paucity of foreign exchange to fund otherwise avoidable overseas expenses, many of them that had always operated on the contract manufacturing model, which engaged overseas-based pharmaceutical companies as their contract manufacturers, have since resorted to patronizing indigenous pharmaceutical companies as preferred contract manufacturers. The CBN's mediations in the pharma industry have therefore redefined the face and focus of contract manufacturing in the industry in the contemporary era. Ade Pokuola is the managing director of Reals Pharmaceuticals. Today, Reals is in contract relationship with 4 different indigenous contract manufacturers for the production of its brand name pharmaceutical products, some of which are stocked in this warehouse awaiting distribution. The company has also deployed part of the facility it raised under the HSIF to support its contract manufacturers with the acquisition of some machinery required to meet the specifications and standards of the products it ordered from them.
I have local products that are made through a third-party arrangement. We call them contract manufacturers. Currently, we have about 4 of them that are manufacturing locally for us. What these people do is to set up a plant and manufacture specific products for you. The very interesting model that is used world over.
Sanofi Aventis Nigeria Limited engages the services of contract manufacturers to produce its brand name pharmaceutical products.
In Nigeria, Sanofi does not have an industrial asset footprint, but we make our products available to our patients locally. We've identified May & Baker as a CMO who has an extra capacity to produce some of our products. They have this big facility at Ota, the pharma center, and we've entered this win-win relationship with them, where we've given them our formulation, we've established our standards, we've carried out quality audits to bring them up to what Sanofi's standard should be, and they're producing these products for us.
Patrick Aja is the managing director of M&B PLC, a big-time indigenous pharmaceutical company that has been in the forefront of the campaign to domesticate contract manufacturing in the pharma industry, so that the intense strain which the offshore variant of the concept exerts on Nigeria's external reserves can be ameliorated. M&B services the orders of many reputable Nigerian pharmaceutical companies which engage contract manufacturers to produce their brand name products. Aja says CBN's Health Sector Intervention Fund helped M&B to expand its production capacity, thus strengthening the company to play the role of contract manufacturer in Nigeria's pharmaceutical industry more robustly.
I'm doing contract manufacturing for some very reputable companies like Sanofi. So what happens now is, if I'm running my paracetamol syrup and Sanofi wants me to run their own syrup, their own will wait until I finish my own. But with the CBN intervention, in the next couple of months, I'm going to have another liquid line running. So I don't need to suspend my product or suspend any other company's product to run. I'm going to be running the 2 lines.
Redirecting the sourcing of the manufacturer in contract manufacturing back home through the CBN empowerment of players has had positive impacts on the economy. This is particularly so both for the pharmaceutical companies that engage contract manufacturers and for the home-based contract manufacturers too. The one has been able to place more orders with manufacturers based in the domestic economy, thus triggering the inherent benefit of doing so, while the other has been kept busier by meeting those orders. These flurry of activities have made locally produced pharmaceutical products more available to consumers in the market. Employees have also been kept very busy at the companies placing the orders, as well as at that of the contract manufacturers producing them. The ready availability of locally produced medicines has also impacted Nigeria's healthcare delivery system positively, while also reducing dependence on imported drugs. Above all, the pharmaceutical companies patronizing contract manufacturers, as well as the contract manufacturing concerns themselves, have both had to employ more hands to meet the resurgence in orders arising both ways.
The contract manufacturer is a growth driver. It benefits all the industry participants, both the contract giver, both the provider, and then the larger economy. For the contract giver, you save cost. Instead of all the initial capital investment you could have made in setting up a factory, you bypass that and you still get your products out in the market. The speed to market is better. It helps you focus your resources on your core competencies as I've previously mentioned. So you can focus more on maybe commercial expertise, marketing, detailing the products, research and development, and then the product is still out there. For the contract provider, when they partner with a global company like Sanofi, it helps them to upgrade and upscale up to their systems to meet the standards expected globally. It's a win-win. We're able to make our products available without having to physically set up a plant, buy land, put up the structure, bring in the machines, train the people, and then run the day-to-day. It's even becoming more and more pertinent for pharma companies. They're beginning to see the benefits of this model, and more people are getting more interested in this model because it works. And then overall, the economy, the productive capacity of the economy is expanded. So it's a win-win, whichever angle you look at it, and it's something we need to really continue.
Patrick Aja, Managing Director of M&B, offers an elaborate explanation of how the support provided to pharmaceutical companies by the CBN through its regime of concessionary loans and the resulting effects of the mediation on the concept of contract manufacturing have registered some largely invisible but positive impacts on the economy. According to Aja, with the domestication of contract manufacturing, those pharmaceutical companies that previously imported their products from abroad, fully manufactured, no longer have to wait almost indefinitely for the shipment to arrive and for yet another indeterminable period to get the goods cleared. Aja says that under the old regime of contract manufacturing, many pharmaceutical companies had gone under, even as the model put the CBN under intense pressure for the provision of foreign exchange to fund the importation of drugs that could have been produced in Nigeria with the domestication of contract manufacturing.
There are a few products that we import from outside of the country, the ones we do not produce here. We import some of them. Last year, for 6 months, those products didn't get in. You have sourced Forex. You have paid for products. They probably are coming from a factory in India. India went into a lockdown. Those products didn't get in for 6 months. I can imagine some smaller companies, if all they depended on was importing products from outside, many of them would have gone down. And it meant that, look, some of those medicines are emergency medicines that the patients need to be on every month. So you can imagine when there was a lockdown and you were depending on products coming from outside, many of the companies would have been severely impacted. Whereas if those products were produced locally, you can be sure that you always get supply. And it means, in fact, I have some people that were working in some of those companies. They had to be laid off. Somebody I know very well was a manager in one of those companies. Because you don't know when the product is going to come. The man had to lay them off. So I think it's very helpful. Whatever we can get locally, let's get them locally. If there are companies that have the capacity to manufacture for those companies, manufacture locally as long as you're sure of the quality. Another benefit, even for CBN, is if we can have many more people, if we can encourage companies like us to produce these things locally, everybody will not be coming to CBN looking for Forex. Because all these people importing, this is very important. If all of us are looking for Forex, both those importing raw materials and those importing finished goods, the pressure on CBN is more. And our Forex reserve will continue to fall. If we can limit the number of people coming to CBN for Forex to just those who need raw materials that cannot be produced, the better for everybody. So I still think that contract manufacturing is going to boost economy generally for the country and be more beneficial to the consumers and the patients. As much as possible, this is something we should encourage.
Certainly, the domestication of contract manufacturing through the impetus offered by the concessionary loans provided by the CBN to players in the pharmaceutical industry through the bank's HSIF has impacted significantly on both the industry and the Nigerian economy. However, there are fears that if certain measures are not taken to sustain the new trend, some players in the industry may, with time, revert to engaging overseas-based pharmaceutical industries to manufacture their orders, thus eroding the gains of the CBN initiative. Two of the measures proposed to avert such an unwelcome development include an advocacy campaign to make Nigerians realize that pharmaceutical products manufactured in the country are as good, if not better, than similar ones manufactured overseas. And the second measure lies squarely on the CBN, and that is to ensure that loans to the sector continue to be made available at concessionary rates.
There probably are two reasons why maybe some companies might not want to manufacture locally. You know, sometimes we have this tendency to think that whatever is imported is better, but it's not true. It's not always true. What we need to be sure of is that the company you're dealing with has qualified professionals and has the equipment that can produce the same thing as you would have produced it in India or in UK or any other place. And that is why companies like ours had to invest a lot in being WHO pre-qualified. So when WHO has given you a stamp of quality, it means the product that comes out of our factory is the same standard as the product that comes out from another WHO certified factory in India, in UK, or any other place. It's important for people to understand that. So first, the companies that are importing products, if they know that you can produce with the same quality as the companies they are importing, they can trust you. So that first challenge would have been sorted out. The second one will be cost. So if what they are importing from outside is cheaper than what you will produce for them, they will continue to import from outside. And one of the reasons why sometimes when you import something from outside is cheaper than what is produced in Nigeria is the cost of funds. Outside the country, Europe, US, interest rates are sub-zero. Interest rates in the US and some other places is 0 point something. Some of them 1%. So when people get such funds, it means that they can afford to manufacture these things at very cheap rates, such that when you even import it, it's cheaper than what is produced. So with CBN giving rates, interest rates at the rates they are giving, single digit, it means we can become competitive. So when we become competitive, I can ask the guy who is importing, how much does it cost you to bring this thing? I'll do the maths. If I can produce for him at the same cost, why will he go through the stress of importing from outside, waiting for probably 60 to 90 days, in some cases, for the product to come in, waiting to clear there and all of that, when I can give you probably at the same price, and if care is not taken, cheaper. And I like to say at this point, if we have many more people contract manufacturing so that the volume goes up, the price will further come down. So if quality is taken care of and cost is taken care of, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't use contract manufacturing with companies like us.
You're welcome back. From what you have seen, it is obvious that the previous model of contract manufacturing practiced in Nigeria's pharmaceutical industry had done more harm than good to the industry and to the national economy as well. Whatever the gains of the model were, they pale into insignificance when compared with its disadvantages. The practice contributed to the otherwise unnecessary and patently avoidable depletion of Nigeria's foreign reserves. It also transferred jobs and the economic benefits that could have been generated at home in Nigeria to the overseas countries where the contract manufacturers engaged are based. It is to the credit of the CBN that through smart thinking and visionary focus, the malaise of 3 decades was reversed almost within a twinkle of an eye. It is not eureka though. If pharmaceutical industries that rely on contract manufacturers to source their products subscribe to the notion that the quality they aspire for can only be met by foreign-based manufacturers, they will continue to exert pressure on Nigeria's foreign reserves, even if the CBN excludes them from accessing foreign exchange through the official windows. Interest rates must also continue to be attractive to encourage more pharma companies that do not own factories to embrace the domestic model of contract manufacturing. Well, that's all we have for you on the program today. Do join us again next week for another edition of You and the Economy. Until then, it's goodbye.